Ted, I'll tell you what, last subject we'll talk to you about. Going to shift gears here. You're going to be calling play-by-play for the Pac-10 this year on the Fox Sports Network, I guess Fox Sports West. What do you make out of that league this year? Is USC pretty much the Roger Federer of the Pac-10?
Well, yes, they are the Roger Federer, but we have a Rafa Nadal in California. And this is going to be a big year. You know, Cal has been knocking on the door, and they've become a top shelf program. But the one thing they've not been able to do is beat USC. They had a chance last year. They took SC to the fourth quarter at the Coliseum and didn't get it done. Now this year, Cal opens its season next Saturday here in Berkeley against Tennessee. And last year they opened with Tennessee in Knoxville and got beaten pretty badly, and it really deflated Cal's hopes. If they can turn the tables, if Cal can win next Saturday against Tennessee, that's going to set them up to make, I think, a run at dethroning USC in the Pac-10, because Cal gets USC in Berkeley this year. Cal's best, I think their toughest games are pretty much home games this year. So California has a tremendous team. They're clearly the second team out here, Kevin. I think UCLA is probably the third team. And I will tell you, the absolute sleeper this year to watch in the Pac-10 is Arizona State.
Uh-huh.
They have talent. They have a very good quarterback, a very good running back returning, some talented receivers. They have Dennis Erickson now coming in as a proven, established, winning coach, and they have 8 home games. And their 4 road games are, quite frankly, I mean, basically the more challenging games they have in conference play are all home games. Their 3 non-conference games are all at home. So they've got what I'm saying is they've got a great schedule. So if anybody's going to surprise from the Pac-10 this year, I would put my eyes on Arizona State.
You know, though, Ted, that's a pretty interesting league from the standpoint from Corvallis to Tucson. You really do have some great college towns in there, some great atmospheres, and that must be kind of fun going from that week to week to week doing that stuff.
Well, what it is, Kevin, you know what? It's not like, listen, there's nothing out here that's like the football you experience there. There's nothing out here like that. You know, USC is now crazy in terms of 95,000 at their home games, but it's a showtime. It's got, LA doesn't have pro football. They have USC. And that's what it's become. It's become like an NFL show. But I'll tell you what's exciting to see in the Pac-10 is Eugene, Oregon. They've turned that into a great college football town, much like the towns that you and the experiences you would have in your part of the country, or maybe some of the SEC places. And Berkeley is becoming that way. Berkeley's got an ancient stadium, unfortunately, but that kind of rabid fan interest. And if Mike Stoops keeps on the track that he's going on, he'll get Arizona going again, and that'll be another town like that. And that's really what the Pac-10 needs, because, look, you've got 2 teams in L.A. and 2 teams in San Francisco, which are pro cities. So it's a lot harder, USC being the exception again, to get a lot of college focus when you're playing in a pro town. I mean, look, SMU and TCU fight the same battle in Dallas-Fort Worth, I'm sure.
They sure do.
Right. So what the Pac-10 needs is the Pac-10 needs the Eugene, Oregons, the Tucson, Arizonas, the Pullman, Washingtons, and Seattle, because Seattle, even though it has pro teams, Seattle is very much like, to me, a Big Ten city, where the state university, the University of Washington, is actually got a tremendous following. And that's what the Pac-10 needs, those cities and teams to be strong, and that gives the league its real college feel.
Okay. All right, once again, we've been talking with Ted Robinson from NBC Sports, ESPN, Fox Sports, USA. We use the analogy, he is like the Paris Hilton of sportscasters, just saturating the airwaves everywhere. Ted, thanks for taking the time to join us, and best of luck on that venture doing the play-by-play in the Pac-10 this year. I'll bet that's going to be a bunch of fun.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I hope my name ends up in her sidekick now that you've made that analogy.
Well, here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, maybe that'll probably be the extent of it. Ted, thanks for joining us.
All right, Kevin. Take care.
All right. Once again, Ted Robinson from the Ted's everywhere. You can see him this week on USA. But, he has done stuff for NBC, for ESPN. He was on ESPN last week. And I'll tell you what, let's just go over some more knucklehead news and the items in the news today. Some of these things really, really amaze me. Here's a good one. New York Knicks guard Stephon Marbury defended Michael Vick, calling dogfighting a sport and comparing it to hunting. Now, Marbury spoke Monday about the federal dogfighting conspiracies against Vick, while promoting his basketball shoe in Albany, New York. I think it's tough, he told an Albany TV station. I think, we don't say anything about people who shoot deer or shoot other animals. From what I hear, dogfighting is a sport. It's just behind closed doors. Well, that's certainly one way of looking at it. Although I've really got to say, from the standpoint of hunting being a sport, I always wondered about that, and I always wondered who could really, really get into that stuff. It's kind of like this, people go ahead and they get their, their guns out and their bullets out and their camouflage out and their vests out, and they go after up a mountain or in a forest looking for those deers. And to me, what's the challenge? If the deer could shoot back, then it would be a challenge. But, the deer can't shoot back, so where's the challenge? And from that standpoint, is that any crueler than dogfighting? Well, from that standpoint, I think, he might be on some solid ground. But, dogfighting, I want to put it this way, that's about as gruesome as it comes. It is outlawed in every state in America. In spite of that, it's still more popular than soccer. They can come and dress the atmosphere up with posh spice all they want. But soccer in this country, it just ain't going anywhere. It's just amazing me, all that, this big deal about David Beckham paying $25 million, come over and play soccer over here. For what? Christina Brennan has had a great article in the USA Today about that, talking about, they bring up Beckham over here to be the soccer savior, and, all he really proved was that, in spite of his contract, you get a Major League Baseball player who was supposedly taking performance-enhancing drugs and beating Hank Aaron's record. You get a quarterback who's one of the most highly visible athletes in the world involved in dogfighting. You get an NBA involved in gambling, and all that stuff about soccer is just taking the back burner. Nobody cares about that. The guy's married to a Spice Girl, moves to L.A., makes incredible money. In a lot of cases, that would be probably something that would gain a lot of headlines. But, good Lord. We already revolted against the British, over 200 years ago. And they weren't trying to stick soccer down our throats at that time. They were just trying to stick the Stamp Act down our throats. So, what's going to make it any different this time? And I'd have to say, for the most part, that's accurate. There is nothing different. We repelled Britain's advances then, and we're kind of repelling them right now. Nobody cares about soccer. Well, or at least nobody cares about it to a major degree. They're certainly not going to fill stadiums like they fill them up there in Europe. You can have the glamour boy who's married to the Spice Girls. That's still not going to cut it. But at any rate, I'm Kevin Long. This is the All New Sports Fan 990, everyone. You like to join in on the conversation, you could do that by dialing 972-4-900-990. That's 972-4-900-990. When we return, we're hoping to talk a little bit about the Texas Longhorns. But why don't we take this break right now? I'm Kevin Long. I'm out of here for just a little bit. We'll be back at you right after these messages.